The session this afternoon is about the third pillar of our mission, which is campaigning. So please welcome Ian Chandler, who is local campaigns coordinator for the West region.
Thank you, Richard. And good. So welcome everybody. So welcome back from lunch. So I'm seeing my neighbour at lunch there. He's awake. He promised me faithfully he was going to stay awake for the afternoon session, despite having had 2 puddings. But if not, you could poke him. So at least one person's going to be awake. Anyway, so we're going to do this last session talking about campaigning, but actually just as part of getting you all going, we're going to start off with a bit of a quiz, an interactive quiz. So actually, if you've got a phone on you or any internet-connected device, can you just grab your phone or tablet, as long as you're connected to the internet. If you go to in your browser, go to www.menti.com, and then you'll be asked to enter a code. If you enter that 6-digit code, 747673, you will then be ready to play our quiz. Now, the good news is I'm not going to quiz you on the research presentation you heard before lunch, so you don't have to remember the different gene names and sequencing things. This is going to be a lot simpler than that. So but I'll just give you a couple of minutes, those of you that have got phones or pads to get involved. Everybody's still there? Is it working for people? Hopefully it will come up. Oops. No? Okay. Right, okay. No, I've got a problem there. That didn't work. Now, for some reason, that is coming up with the answer already, so we don't need to do that. So, archive results, archive results for this. Okay. No, sorry, that's one's. Okay, maybe the first question. Let me just, hopefully, see if we'll go for the second one. That's all right. Okay, so the first one, just obviously in my practice run, it just didn't work. So the first question was, how many councils have adopted the MND Charter? Which, if you were listening closely to Sally's presentation this morning, you would know the answer to that. And the answer was indeed 75. So we'll forget that one. So we'll move to the next question, of which I have to activate this. And waiting for players, we've got a load of players here. So good. Start question 2. The NICE guideline on MND was published in which year? You're time limited on how long you've got to reply to this. I think it's about 10 seconds or so, 15 seconds. So was it published in 2012, 2014 or 2016? And, okay, well. So the answers were, so the majority of you voted for 2014. Actually, it was only 2016 that the guidelines were published. So, but that was one of our campaigning successes of working with that to get that to be published. Next question is, and start question 3. So how many e-actions do you think have been taken by Campaigns Network members so far in 2018? So the total number of actions taken by members of our campaigning network. 164, 1640 or 16,400? And you've got another 4 seconds to vote. And what do you reckon? And no, 1,640. Okay. So some of you were quite optimistic there. And I wish you were right. So clearly we'd like more people to be part of the campaigning network to do this. But having said that, I still think 1,640 different individual actions taken by our supporters to lobby their MPs or their members of the assemblies or to take actions such as tweeting messages that we're putting out, I think is actually a really good achievement. next question is, start question 4. Okay, what is the average additional cost of living with motor neuron disease, not including loss of income? This came from our MND costs research. The average additional cost of living with MND, not including loss of income. And, okay. And the answer is, from the research that we did and published last year, which has been very influential, £1,000 per month or £12,000 a year is how much it costs just to have motor neuron disease without any loss of income of the person with the disease or their carers. So, and that research that we've published and used has been very influential in influencing government and other bodies so far, and we're still using it. And then a final question here for the quiz part of it is, what proportion of people with motor neuron disease who apply for the PIP benefit were able to do so using the fast-track process for terminal illness, or SRTI? Was it 42%, 82%, or 100%? So how many were fast-tracked into getting the benefit? What proportion? Yep. And you're pretty much all right there. Why has that said it's not true? But actually, 42% is correct. Why it's saying it's wrong, I have no idea. But anyway, show the winner. Okay, just on the end here, just as winners here, we can see that on that one, Creagh did very well. Well done, Creagh, good to see. We won't worry about some of the others. Okay, so... But just as a few ideas, just to introduce a few of the things that we do, and I'll talk a little bit more about those, but in terms of the range of different issues we're working on in terms of benefits and costs, but also care and the NICE guidelines and the charter, and all of those other areas are areas we worked on in campaigning. But I'd just like to give you, this isn't a quiz question, this is just we're going to generate a little word cloud up on the screen here. Can you just enter a single word now? To express your understanding of or feelings about campaigning, a word that you associate with campaigning or how you feel about campaigning. You do it 3 times, 3 separate words, but not a phrase. Do that, and then hopefully that will generate a bit of a word cloud. Oh, and I've got to activate this, sorry. It's probably not up there because I didn't press the activate button. Okay, so hopefully you've got that option now, just to enter in a word. So I'd like to get a little bit of a picture from you when we generate a word cloud about how you feel about campaigning. Okay, starting, influencing, improvement, voice. Okay, the size of the word depends on how many people have entered that particular word. So as we're going on there, obviously awareness is coming out very high, influencing, and then a number of other words, passion, funding, improvement, convincing, fairness, will not be beaten. I like that, networking, tenacious, really important part of that, voice, giving people a voice, influencing, activism. So there's a whole range of different words that we've come up with that. So it's good to see they're all quite positive words. Actually, I don't see any negative words there. I don't think vital is there, pressurising, so that's good. That's encouraging. And then finally, I just want to get a picture of how involved you are in campaigning at the moment on motor neuron disease. Are you already active in campaigning on MND, or are you just more interested in getting involved, or you're not interested? So again, opportunity just to give us a bit of a picture about where you are on this spectrum, because not everybody is or needs to be involved in campaigning, but clearly the more people there are, the easier it's for us. So roughly at the moment it's going about half of you are already active, half of you and the other half are sort of not active but are interested, and then a few of you that are not interested at this moment in time on campaigning. Well, that's just good to get that snapshot from you. And certainly those of you that are not already involved but are interested, please get in touch with, and talk to some of the colleagues here in the branch, and in particular in Northern Ireland, talking to Colm and Alana, who are sitting at the table at the front here, who are the campaigns contacts for the branch. So if you get in touch with them, and they would help to draw you in and get you involved in the activities that are happening here. So thank you for that part of the quiz. I want to just sort of take us out of that now. You can put your phones away, so we won't be using those again in this session. I just wanted to recap why we campaign as an association. Because we campaign and raise awareness so that the needs of people with motor neuron disease and everyone who cares for them are recognised and addressed by wider society. That's part of our association mission statement, and that's the heart of why we do it. In terms of how we campaign, it's very much based on working through our volunteers and supporters. They are our campaigners. It is our volunteers, our supporters that engage with the politicians, with wider society, with communities, to bring our issues to the attention of the public and the politicians. And they're the core, they're the heart of our campaigning work. Clearly, we also engage in more direct dialogue with government ministers and officials. So there are people in the association, both staff and volunteers, who do that, and it's all for them. For us, it's about talking to the right people at the right time, being clear about what we're saying, who we're talking to, and we do that a lot of the time, both in London, in the Ministries of Health, the Ministries of Work and Pensions, but of course here in Northern Ireland with the Department of Communities and Department of Health, and the same in Wales with the Welsh Government. And then the third strand of our campaigning work is making sure we've got clear goals supported by solid evidence. And that's the heart of any successful campaigning, is be very clear about what it is we want. Not have a vague wish list, but have a very clear certain objectives, certain goals that we want to achieve, that we can articulate clearly to the decision makers and back it up with solid evidence. I'm emphasising here that for our campaigning, personal stories are key. We're not going to win many arguments by statistically talking about the numbers of people that are affected, because we are a very small cohort of people, if you like, that are fighting for services compared with other groups of people who maybe have much more higher numbers of people that are affected. So for us, it's personal stories that are key, that how we can tell those stories of how people take that journey of motor neuron disease and some of the battles that they have to fight and the barriers they have to overcome. And the more we can tell those stories, the more we can bring people on board and help to overcome some of those barriers and change the policies that we want. So we've done a lot of campaigning, and I'm just going to highlight a few things. Certainly there are opportunities in elections, and you never know, we might be having another one soon, if we do believe what's going on. But elections are a really important time for us in campaigning, because it's an opportunity to get in front of both candidates and those that are successful in winning seats in the various parliaments that we have in England, Wales and Northern Ireland. So the UK general election 2015, we had a very successful campaign called Don't Let Me Die Without a Voice. In the 2016 Welsh Assembly elections, we did a campaign around motor neuron disease won't wait. And similarly, the 2016 Northern Ireland Assembly elections, we did Every Breath Counts as a campaign. And then again in the 2017 general election, the snap one we had last year, we campaigned on benefit reassessments. And have had, in some of these campaigns, we've had considerable successes, both in terms of the numbers of candidates engaged, the responses we've had from those candidates, but also those that then got elected into, as I said, the parliaments, then getting involved with us as allies or joining the all-party groups that we work with and things like that. So some of the achievements, just a few highlights, which we just talked about. I've talked about the NICE guidelines in the quiz. That was clearly one of our key campaigning achievements, not just campaigns. It was the whole organisation working together on that. But it was a fundamental achievement to win that. Our MND costs report that I mentioned, that talked about that £12,000 a year additional cost of living with motor neuron disease, with not taking into account loss of income, has been quite influential in working with stakeholders in government. that 12,000 a year, and we're using that now as part of our benefits campaign, working on different ways, different issues to do with benefits, the whole issue of benefit reassessments, so that we've managed to win government backing or government concessions that people living with motor neuron disease shouldn't have to be reassessed every few years for their benefits, that it's a pointless, distressing, humiliating and unnecessary bureaucratic exercise. We haven't completely won on everything on that, because certainly within the ASA group people have to go through one final reassessment before they can get the tick box on the database that says they don't need any further reassessments, and we're continuing pressure on the government with that. But we're also working on other issues around benefits, which I'll talk about a little bit more at them later on, and myself and Colm will talk about that. We're instrumental in supporting the all-party parliamentary group on motor neuron disease in the Westminster Parliament. We provide the secretariat for that group, and with that group, there's a number of things that that group have studied. One of the reports that they published last year was on PIP and MND, people's access to personal independent payment benefits and motor neuron disease, and highlighting a lot of the barriers and unnecessary processes that people have to go through. And as I said, leading on from that, we're talking about some of the issues about how people could be fast-tracked into that benefit and to other benefits as part of our campaign that we're working on at the moment. And of course, championing the charter, the MND charter, again, that Sally talked about earlier, is one of our successes in terms of, as I said, 75 councils and a number of other health and social care bodies have adopted the charter, and we're using that as a way of both raising awareness amongst those institutions and the people that work in those institutions, but also using it as a way of opening doors to try and get more service improvements from those bodies. So there's a lot that we've achieved over the years that we've been campaigning, or the relatively few years that we've been campaigning, and we're growing in both confidence and experience and capacity as more and more people get involved in this, and we're getting more ambitious as we go along. And some of the things that we're working on at the moment is one of our priority at the moment is Scrap 6 Months, which is our campaign to remove the 6-month restriction from the fast-track process for terminal illness, for people accessing a whole range of benefits. And I'm going to introduce this with a little clip from the BBC News that Colm was interviewed in, where he's talking about, and another person talking about the 6 months restriction and why we need to get rid of it.
I've had to accept that. So why put me through another load of worry and stress?
People with dementia.
Under the rules of the main disability benefit, people with terminal conditions can get the money quicker than usual without having a face-to-face assessment, but only if they have 6 months or less to live.
It means so much to me.
Martin didn't qualify because the nature of his illness means no one can be sure when he'll die.
People with dementia.
Dementia Northern Ireland has supported him through the application for the personal independence payment, which he found almost unbearable.
This made me very suicidal because I didn't need the pressure. I had enough pressure on me with the dementia. I'd been through the hospital, I'd been through the doctor, so I had all the letters and all the scans. So why did I have to come out and visit me?
No.
The issue also affects people with motor neuron disease.
Ready to go on your holidays?
Colm used to be the principal of a special needs school. His terminal illness has already taken away his job and his voice. But like Martin, his life expectancy is unpredictable, so he'll have to be reassessed for the benefit. He spoke to me through an app on his phone.
I'm planning the reassessment in August next year. We would like the definition of terminal illness to extend beyond the present system of 6 months, and for reassessment for those with terminal illness to be scrapped. That would make it reasonable, fair and equitable.
In Scotland, the government's brought in new legislation It means a person will be fast-tracked through the benefit system simply if a doctor says they're terminally ill. Here in Northern Ireland, all 5 main political parties say they want the same change in the rules. This politician has been taking the lead in the campaign.
I think that anyone who has any conscience or who has any heart, when they realise that this is what people with terminal illnesses are being put through, I think that they would rightly say that this is callous and it's cruel.
The devolved government at Stormont collapsed 18 months ago. So at least until devolution's restored, Northern Ireland will stay in line with law decided at Westminster. Ministers have always said the benefit aims to support disabled people who face the greatest barriers to leading full, active, independent lives. The Labour MP Madeleine Moon is proposing her own legislation for England and Wales. Her husband died from motor neuron disease.
The unknown time you have must be spent not about worrying benefits and accessing benefits or keeping a roof over your head. It must be spent in love, laughter, and taking the painful journey together.
This deeply personal matter is moving up the political agenda. The people affected say they're going to keep campaigning for as long as time allows. Chris Page, BBC News, Belfast.
And it really is moving up the political agenda, but it is a really important issue for us at the moment. As I said, issues around the application process. If you're not going through the fast-track process, then it is long and lengthy application processes and delays, but also some absurdities. So like when you apply for universal credit, which is being rolled out in Northern Ireland at the moment, if you're not going through the fast-track process, one of the requirements at the very early stage in the application process is you have to sit down at a job centre with a work coach to discuss your career aspirations and how you're going to apply for jobs. How humiliating is that for someone that's actually had to give up their job reluctantly because of the disease? There are so many distressing absurdities and waste of time that goes through this. But our research and the research we've been working closely with Marie Curie in Northern Ireland as well, has discovered that actually it's very hard for many people to get that to go through that special rules process because of that 6-month restriction, because of health professionals maybe reluctant to sign it, or because the Department of Work and Pensions in England and Wales or Department of Communities here challenges some of those certifications, or actually that people emotionally just don't want to go through that process because of that acknowledgement of saying to themselves they've only got 6 months as opposed to 12 months or 2 years. It's an absurdity, so we think it's really important. And, as said, we've, Column's met with several MPs and MLAs in Northern Ireland, and as said, we've got commitment from all 5 parties that this needs to be overcome. But without a functioning assembly in Northern Ireland, there's very limited opportunity for any real change here. So that's why our focus of attention now is on Westminster, where there is an opportunity for a change in the law. And once that happens for England and Wales, then the potential for the Secretary of State for Northern Ireland to introduce a very quick bill to replicate that in Northern Ireland is there. So that's our emphasis at the moment and our strong priority. And for the next 2 months, because the next 2 months for this campaign are critical, we need to win government support for Madeleine Moon's private members bill. As a private members bill, it's not going to pass unless the government supports it. As much as we can get, we think she's going to get a lot of support from the backbenches. Unless the government gives it time to go through the process in the House of Commons and the House of Lords, it won't pass. So our priority for the next 2 months, because her bill is being read on the 20-something of November for the second reading. If we haven't got government support by then, it's going to fail, you see. So our emphasis is to try and get government support for this on the 23rd of November. And we're doing that by working both with MPs of all parties, but particularly MPs that are supporting the government, so Conservative and DUP MPs, but also trying to make this into more of a public issue in the media and with the public, so that the government feels that it is worth its while to invest a little bit of time into allowing this bill to go through. I mean, we've been talking with the ministers, Esther McVey and Sarah Newton, and although they have a certain level of sympathy with what we're saying, they're not, at the moment, they're not they don't want to do it, basically, because they don't want to invest that time and that change and that effort, and we've got to make them convinced that it is worth their while doing it. So it's overcoming that inertia. It's not as if there's massive opposition, but there is massive inertia that we have to overcome. So I hope you'll be able to engage and support on that, particularly over the next 2 months. The other big campaign that we've been working on for the last 2 or 3 years is championing the Charter. And Sally already mentioned the Charter earlier in her presentation, but I just want to say a little bit more. I don't want to say a little bit more, but I want you to hear a little bit more about the Charter. So I'm going to hand over to Alana, the campaign's contact for the branch, who's going to talk a little bit about the Charter and what she's achieved here.
Hi, so I got involved with campaigning. It would be going on about 6 years ago now, I suppose, after my stepdad was diagnosed with motor neuron disease. And being a digital native, one of the first places that I went to sort of vent my frustration was social media. So I was always interested in politics and decided, well, I'll just shout about it to the politicians and ask them, why aren't you doing anything about this, essentially? One of the first campaigns that I really sunk my teeth into then was the Charter. And as Sally said, you know, there are 5 councils now over here that have signed up to the Charter, and the first was Belfast City Council. And it felt like a really long process at the time, but it was one that started of an afternoon with about 70 emails. And I just got up the website for Belfast City Council, who all of the councillors were, and started to email every single one of them with an email that was laid out with who I was, what my connection to them was, if I had any, whether that was if they represented my electoral area, if I had met them at an event, a bit of research to see had they any link to the association, had they been at anything, and if they hadn't, obviously explaining what motor neuron disease is. Then I explained what the Charter is, and after that just said, realistically, those 5 points of the Charter are to be expected. You know, they're not necessarily a big ask. Therefore, that led to then saying, will you please raise this with Belfast City Council as a motion to get them all to support it? The first person that got back to me was Emma Groves, a councillor for West Belfast, and her response was absolutely, yep, let's do this. We'll bring it to the council and we'll get them to pledge their support. We went to the council in December 2015, and she made a fantastic speech that was supported by Alderman Brian Kingston, who is now the Lord Mayor of Belfast. And it was brilliant to have, obviously, that cross-party support, because here, with the political climate that we have, you can't have something become a one-party issue. So it was fantastic, it was supported, and we had an event the following September with a civic reception, and City Hall was illuminated in the MND colours. Now, while the councils maybe don't have the same remit as they do over in England and Wales, it's quite often that the councillors move roles within their parties, and whether that's if our assembly ever gets back up and running, they could be moving on to an MLA role, they could be moving on to one that's a bit more influential, and although the councils themselves maybe don't have a massive remit, those individuals could move into positions where they do. So it is important for us to continue to target the remaining 6 councils, I think it is, that are yet to sign up, and our ask would be that anyone who's in one of those areas gets involved. You know, that was a really simple email that was sent, and yes, it was time consuming to send it to that many people, but it paid off. You know, it was the start of it. When we had one council, then you were able to go to others and say to them, Belfast have done it, why don't you do it? Also, those individuals within the council could bring it forward to their party. As Councillor Groves did, she stood at her party conference and asked them as a party to support the Motor Neuron Disease Association and to pledge their commitment to the Charter. That's something that we want other parties to do, other organisations to do, and really bring that forward. So I would encourage, as I said, anyone who's in one of those areas, anyone who has any contacts within those parties, within those councils, to get involved. You know, reach out to one of the campaigns team to ask for a bit of support, for a bit of advice if you're worrying about messaging or anything like that. But it really just does start with sitting down with your laptop, I suppose, in some cases, and putting the word out there. That's what I did. I, as a digital native, thought that's my best way of starting that conversation. And hopefully within the next 2 years, I'm just going to be really ambitious, 2 years, we'll have those 6 councils signed up, and Northern Ireland's super councils will have all championed the Charter. I'm going to move on.
Less than 2 years. 1 year. No pressure. But it was good, and thanks for that, because I think it really shows that, how things can snowball from, somebody starting an action and how that it gets other people involved, and then the whole message snowballs and snowballs and snowballs. And that's what campaigning's about, really. It's sometimes, it sounds very scary and very high-powered and all those things, but it isn't at the end of the day. Campaigning is about talking to people, and through those conversations, that snowballs out, and more people get involved until the momentum behind a change is insurmountable. No, that's the wrong word. Anyway, you know what I mean. Just to give you a heads up, I've talked about it. So, Scrap 6 Month is our priority in terms of for the rest of this year, alongside the Charter, which is an ongoing campaign. In 2019, we will be launching a campaign on accessible housing. And so just to give you a heads up on that, we're not sure about exactly when in 2019 yet, probably sometime in the spring. In fact, we've got our first real planning meeting for this next week. But some of you have already been involved in the engagement process. We've been doing a lot of research with yourselves as members and with health and social care professionals and with others about the issues around accessible housing. We know it's one of the key issues that the challenges that face people with motor neurone disease about how to get accessible housing, how to get, whether it's the financial barriers, whether it's the slow pace of decision making, whether it's some of the emotional issues around either adapting your home or moving to an accessible home, all of those types of things. These is what you've told us, and we are in the process of trying to bring that together into a coherent campaign that we'll be telling you a lot more about over the next few months. So that will be coming up in the future. There's a slide from Colin, who just wanted to talk about campaigning plans for the branch in 2018 and beyond, or the priorities, but I'll just read this out for him. In terms of the branch, we want to build up contacts and partnerships to influence policy making on motor neuron disease, and to raise awareness through social media of motor neuron disease, as well as collaborating with HQ. By that he means us, Northampton, and the wider association regarding campaigning issues on Scrap 6 Months and housing and other issues. And as Alana just said, get all the political parties, the health and social care trusts and councils to adopt the Charter, and the Scrap 6 Months campaign to move ahead on that. But all of that requires, as I said, people. And what the branch really wants is to involve more of you in campaigning, whether it's a part of the campaigning network where you can do online actions, or more importantly, is working within the branch, doing offline actions, doing the face-to-face work, working with Alana and Colin and Siobhan in terms of doing that local influencing. So I really do encourage you to get involved, get in touch with them, and see how we can work together to really push the pressure out, because there are so many issues, as we've heard today. There are so many good things happening, but still there is so much more to be done in terms of health and social care provision, whether it be through respiratory services or psychological and emotional support, or benefits, or all those other areas. There's plenty still that we can achieve, and with a good campaign we can achieve an awful lot. But what I want to give you an opportunity to do is, just in this last 5 minutes, really, is just in your tables. I just want you to spend literally 5 minutes, no more, just thinking about, in terms of campaigning in Northern Ireland, the types of questions: who should we target, or what should we be campaigning on? What do we want to achieve, and who is able to help us do this? And it'd be great if you just got an opportunity just to talk in your tables for a few minutes, just to come up with a few thoughts that you've got, having heard of this presentation around campaigning. Where do you think we should be going forward on campaigning in Northern Ireland? So just a few minutes, just a few talks. Hopefully there's somebody from a branch volunteer on each table that can take notes and just give us a very brief feedback at the end. Is that okay with everybody? So if there's not somebody with a blue t-shirt on a table, can you, or if you've got a small table, just cluster together.
It's going to take more than 5 minutes, that's fine. Don't worry.
I'm going to have to limit you to just one more minute, I'm afraid. Just one more minute. Okay, everybody. I'm afraid, just time pressures, I'm going to cut your conversations off now. But there will be other opportunities to have such a conversation with the branch. We'll look at convening meetings to talk about campaigning for the branch to see who wants to get involved. But I just want to hear a little, very briefly, a flavour of some of the ideas or thoughts that you had from each of the tables. So we're just going to go around with the roving mics, but just a few words from each table. So maybe start.
Yeah, so we were discussing about how it is good to start with the councillors because they feed into the MLAs. MLAs care about their area maybe more so than the population at large, and they do care about local areas. The campaigns that we should be sort of focusing on, we were thinking with regards to awareness, and it appears that we are sort of hitting the right track with focusing on the ease of access to benefits to housing, and our table feel it would be beneficial to be able to be signposted towards an individual, someone that can advise on structural adjustments and housing matters like that.
Okay, thank you. Great. Over here.
So I guess we came to the conclusion that although the politicians aren't actively engaging in government at the moment, each of those parties still have health spokespeople. And with the connections that we made last night with a couple of MLAs and council representatives, that they were very keen to try and organise something themselves, and they felt if the idea originated with themselves to hold an MND event, there's probably more likelihood that you would get more people to attend. And also the point was made here that each council has a health committee. So maybe that's a way of actually bringing a presentation on the charter to each of those health committees and those 6 remaining councils that haven't adopted the charter yet. So that might be an action.
Good, thank you. Over there. Yeah.
Yeah, we thought on the same lines, we said the councils first because it was not a chance in hell that it's going to happen in Stormont anyway. So we do the councils first, and then we thought maybe young people, they know nothing, If you get them, they're the old people of tomorrow sort of thing, get them in first. What do we want to achieve? We said understanding what MND is, getting people to understand it. That would be the young people in it. And quicker diagnosis and better financial support. And the last one was if you can get the big corporations in and involved in this here as well, to get money for whatever it is, something like that.
Great, thanks.
I wasn't expecting to have a microphone. Okay, so we had some good ideas about a couple of connections that the members on this table knew so that we could lobby some MPs, which was great. A number of things, obviously the Stop 6 Months campaign is very important to people, but also we know respiratory services are not always good in Northern Ireland, so campaigning about that. And then another real problem that we've talked about, but I've heard many times, is Motability not being available for people over 65, which is utterly crazy. It's as though once you get to 65, you don't really want to go anywhere or go out or have any kind of social life. So that's a completely ridiculous. So really using personal contacts to try to get the messages across to people.
Sorry. I have no glasses, so I can't really read what we're saying. So who do we want to target? Local politicians, obviously. Possibly personalities. Somebody with, somebody that's on Twitter, local personalities, footballers, sports stars, anything like that there. And possibly corporations that was mentioned earlier. What do we want to achieve? The charter, obviously, accepted within the councils. We want to achieve more pressure, get ourselves out there in the media a wee bit more. The letter, formal letter, the campaign, everybody can just send it, it's there. Anybody wants it, then they can send it and send it to their local MP.
We mentioned the same as yourselves, bringing awareness, and the only one that wasn't mentioned then here was the doctors. We talked about the number of doctors who, when they meet someone with MND, it may be the first person they've met. So we talked about the red flag cards and making sure that we bring those to our GPs. That was only the eggs.
Well, an awful lot of what's been said here already was covered in our table as well, but we felt that we should be pressurising the MLAs because they're not doing an awful lot at the moment. Hopefully they're doing something in their own constituencies if they're not sitting storming. Also, we do think we need to raise awareness more. People need to be made aware of what it is and the fact that it's not something that you get when you're old. You talk to young kids, they need to know that you can be any age and suffer from this affliction. It's not any gender, any age. Anybody can get this. And the more we try to raise awareness and raise financial support for the research, the better chance there is that at some stage in the future we'll come up with something that will either can halt it or cure it or whatever. And that's important. And if you have to do that in normal media, or social media, getting the word out is crucial.
We probably covered very similar things to everybody else. I think one thing that was flagged in terms of raising awareness was the thought of whether we could use TV ads, although there was an acknowledgement that that is quite expensive. And also the realisation that the Ice Bucket Challenge was quite a few years ago now, so people have stopped talking about it in the same way. So almost how do we raise that? One thing that was mentioned on the table, which is probably because we have a couple of people from the Northern Trust, is the role of the trusts and the idea of being able to talk to perhaps the chief executives. And there are 2 volunteers here who may not be in post much longer, but but who are happy to go and talk to their chief executive about what could be the role of the trust in the charter, because obviously the responsibility for councils over here, as you said, is very different and lays with the trusts. And then the third thing was really not to underestimate the power of the personal contact with friends and family in terms of those networks, particularly within Northern Ireland, which is such a small community.
As an association, most of you are aware that we've changing the way that we do our more general awareness raising work, and we're launching a new campaign which has started off with some posters in bus shelters and stuff, and there's a film just about to come out. So Sally, maybe you need to say a little bit more about that.
So I saw a draft of the film day before yesterday, and that's just gone for some final flash wham bang bits of flashing lights attached to it. It's called The Roller Coaster. Actually, it's called The Ride, but it's about a roller coaster. So that film will be distributed, first of all, at least on social media, and we will target people who, for whatever reason, we think may be particularly interested in that. But we have got a poster campaign up. We were given heavily discounted spaces, but unfortunately the company that gave us the heavy discount don't have spaces in Northern Ireland. So what we've done instead is we've put increased resources into distributing the film in Northern Ireland. So unfortunately no posters, but extra coverage of the film, hopefully. So obviously if you do receive the film on social media through Twitter or through Facebook, please share it with all of your followers so that we get as wide coverage of that as we can. And we've taken a slightly different approach. You'll find it slightly more hard-hitting than our previous campaigns, a little bit bolder, which was what the group of people affected by MND that helped us to develop and design the film wanted. And we hope it'll be very impactful and really get our message out. So look out for that in the next few weeks.
Thanks for that, Sally. So I thought on that particular issue about the awareness raising, I think just to let you know these things are coming, and you'll hear more about that very soon. In terms of the other, the other issues that you came up with, absolutely, and it's good to hear those ideas, in terms of what we should be addressing, but how we can do it, who we can engage with, and volunteers of help with contacts that we've got. Yeah, let's use those straight away as much as we can. And really, that's just what I want to sum up with at the end. I think it is, as I said at the beginning of this presentation, campaigning, how we campaign in the MND Association is through supporters and volunteers. And I know the branch in Northern Ireland is very keen to involve more of you directly in campaigning in all sorts of different ways. So the opportunity to step forward and be part of that. So please, and I emphasise again, talk to Colm, talk to Alana, or talk to Stephen and Mari, or Siobhan, and basically, the branch would like to form more of a cohesive group of people involved in campaigning to take these issues forward. And the other aspect, of course, is for those of you that have personal experiences that you'd like to share through your stories, particularly if you've had challenges and difficulties that you've had to face with the system, with either the benefit system or the housing system, then we are always like to hear those stories, particularly if you're willing to be videoed on those stories. Again, we'd be quite interested. So again, get in touch with the branch, they'll get in touch with me, and we'll try and make that happen. Okay, and we'll be able to use that and use your stories to try and achieve change. As we said in the title of this presentation, change for people now, but also change for people in the future. And that's what it's all about. Thank you very much for your time, and I look forward to working with you more in the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Ian. Thank you very much. I won't share my score on the test. Too embarrassing. But are there any questions for Ian? You've had some good table time. It was a little bit short, so apologies for that, but certainly there's some good ideas came out of that. But does anybody have a question for Ian about campaigning, raising awareness? Sally?
It was only, and I might have missed it, that I think Alana said if people have any contacts in the councils that haven't signed the charter, that would be really helpful. But did I miss which councils haven't signed the charter? I just wondered if people needed to know that.
Yeah, I've just found the map. So Derry City and thank you. Derry City and Strabane District Council have been approached. Causeway Coast and Glens have not adopted the charter. Fermanagh and Omagh District have not adopted the charter. Neither have Armagh, Banbridge and Craigavon, Newry, and Down, or the Lisburn Council. We're aware that the Derry and Strabane has been approached, but with regards to the other ones, if someone has individually approached them, then we haven't been made aware of that.
Thank you, Alana. Any other questions for Ian?
Siobhan just prompted me as well to say that when I was talking about the scrap 6 months and the special rules for terminal illness, of course, not only have we had all support from the 5 political parties in Northern Ireland, but also the Department of Communities did commissioned the Water Radar report, which concluded the same change should happen in Northern Ireland as happened in Scotland. So there is unanimous approval in Northern Ireland for the change. It is all just down to either Westminster or your Assembly to make that change happen. So we still need your support on that. Anyway, sorry. But I just thought I'd just put that in while we're waiting for other questions. Other questions or comments?
No? Okay. If not, thank you very much. Thank you again, Ian. A reflection from me on campaigning. Sally hadn't been with us as an organisation very long, and we were in a board meeting and we were having discussions about our strategy. And those of you that have been around as long as I have will know that we've always had care and we've always had research as two of the main things that we do. We have also always campaigned, and we've aimed to raise awareness, but it's never been a formal part, if you like, of the structure that we talk about. And sadly, Sally suddenly said, do you think it'd be a good idea if we actually made it a formal part of our mission statement? And we all said yes. And so it was agreed. And on reflection, I think that was a great suggestion and a great decision, because it has opened up possibilities for all of us to get more involved than perhaps we were before. Not everybody wants to be an AV, not everybody has the skills to be an AV, but we all get the capability of getting in touch with our local councillors and politicians and writing emails and doing whatever we do. So I think that was a great thing that happened. So Sally, thank you for that. So before I draw the day to a close, Stephen, you'd like to say something again?
Sorry, folks, I'm a serial publicist, so I don't like to miss out on anything here. But two things I want to say. One, just if you hadn't noticed, our website's now up and running. Same old domain name, www.mndani.com. Please use it. The second thing is there are two young ladies here today who've been running around like blue-ass flies, helping us out, and we'd like to make a small presentation to both of them. The first is the camera lady, Adele. I don't know how we're going to get a photograph of you getting the presentation, Adele. And the second one is the young lady who's been upstairs administering pampering, Kim Wilson. So is she here somewhere? Yep, go on ahead, my girl. Thank you very much, Gary. And I'll just finish off by saying to all of you who came over to make this conference a success, thank you very much. To all you who attended, thank you very much. We in Northern Ireland have set the bar high for the other regions.
Stephen, I certainly would agree with that. And again, thank you all for coming today. I hope you found it useful. I hope you found it interesting. And I hope you'd agree it's been a great opportunity to learn more than maybe you knew when you arrived this morning about what we do as a great organisation. So we had a very good overview from Sally this morning about the totality of what we do. And then we had a series of fantastic presentations from Team Care and Support, which really were very good. Then research. I've been coming to AGMs and regional conferences probably for about 10 years now. And every time I come away from them, leave those conferences, I leave with a feeling that we are getting closer to cracking this awful disease. It's not going to happen tomorrow, maybe not happen in 10 years, but I have the feeling that the research community are doing fantastic work and that one day we are going to achieve our vision. Then we had Ian's session, which was, again, very interesting. Thank you for that, Ian. And I hope that will give you the ideas of where else you can get involved if you aren't already involved. There's lots of opportunities, lots of things that need to be done, and that applies not just here in Northern Ireland, but across the whole of the territory that we cover. Finally, I would like to thank again Stephen and the Northern Ireland branch for their support and involvement in organising what I hope you feel has been a very successful day. And somebody used the word, I think it was Sally, who during the day said there's a feeling of community in the room, and that I certainly think is very true. I leave with a great sense that there are a lots of great people doing great things in all Northern Ireland. So thank you for everything that you do. Finally, somebody left this in reception. So I'm sure there's a gentleman somewhere out there who's realizes he's forgotten it, so it's there for collection. And please, before you do go, fill in your evaluation forms and leave those with the conference people outside. And again, thank you all for coming. Thank you for the contribution, and I wish you a safe journeys home.